My name is Mara Delgado, and I was 33 years old when my husband handed me divorce papers on Christmas Day, in a red envelope, in front of his entire family. His mother smiled when she saw it. His father nodded like a man relieved a chore was finally done. And my husband sat across the table with the exact expression of someone who has never once lost anything in his life. None of them knew that a small blue gift box sitting under their tree, the one I'd asked him to open first, contained the one thing capable of ending every lie they'd spent the last 7 months protecting. Welcome to Hidden Chapters, where the quiet ones stop staying quiet. If you've ever smiled through a room that was about to blow up in your favor, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe, because you're going to want to see what was inside that box. To explain that Christmas table, I have to take you back 7 years, to a backyard barbecue at my business partner Teo's place. I was 26, a licensed landscape architect 2 years into running my own small design-build firm, the kind of woman most people expected to keep working under somebody else forever. I had different plans. My husband, Colin Ashford, wasn't loud like everyone else at that barbecue. He stood near the fence with a beer he barely touched, watching the whole yard with an amused, patient look, like he was cataloging everyone. He was finishing a law degree at the time, clerking part-time. Our first date was supposed to last an hour. We closed the restaurant instead. By midnight, I noticed something rare. For the first time in years, someone wasn't treating my calloused hands and steel-toe boots like a personality flaw. I've never met someone who actually builds things, he told me. I mean it. A whole future, not just a yard. I fell for him that night, and I'd like to tell you I regret it, but that's not entirely true, because for a while, it was good. 2 years later we moved in together. I worked 60-hour weeks building what became Delgado Design Studio. Colin finished his bar exam. Money was tight on his end, so I never made a thing of it. I covered his exam fees, his interview suits, the flights when he wanted to visit his parents in Charleston. "We're investing in us," he'd say, and I believed every word of it, the way you believe things from someone whose opinion you've decided matters more than your own instincts. I proposed in our 3rd year, at the same restaurant, and he cried before I even finished the sentence. His family reacted differently online than in person. His mother, Diane, had never once hidden the fact that she thought her son was too polished for a woman who did yard work, her words, at a Thanksgiving I still remember precisely. His father, Grant, called my company the mowing thing for 4 straight years. Colin defended me at the time. "Mara's building something real," he told them. "Most people our age are still figuring out life. She already has hers built." I held on to that sentence for years. I wonder now if he believed it, or if he just knew it was the thing that would keep me quiet and grateful. Our wedding, a year later, was paid for almost entirely by me, because Colin had just started at a firm and wanted to get established first. That's also where I properly met his older brother, Wesley, and Wesley's wife, Priya. Priya arrived in a dress that cost more than my wedding shoes and spent the reception explaining, unprompted, that she was a senior finance director at a biotech firm downtown. She loved talking about her investors. She loved talking about her Aspen trips. Most of all, she loved talking. Colin laughed at every single thing she said that night. I assumed, at the time, that he was just being polite to his new sister-in-law. I had no idea I was watching the opening scene of the worst year of my life. The next 3 years were everything I'd wanted. My firm grew to 11 employees. I bought us a house, a converted farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a yard big enough for the kids Colin always said he wanted someday. I paid off his remaining loans. Bought him a car when his died. Covered every vacation, every birthday, every someday he mentioned out loud. Every Sunday we drove to his parents for dinner, and the pattern never changed, Diane critiquing someone's cooking, Grant lecturing about the market, Wesley trying to referee, Priya running the table. Looking back now, I can finally see the thing I refused to see then. Whenever Priya walked into a room, Colin noticed first. Whenever dinner ended, the two of them somehow ended up alone in the kitchen for 15, 20 minutes at a stretch, doing dishes nobody asked them to do. I sat with Wesley and told myself trust makes ordinary moments invisible. It does. That's exactly the problem with it. Around our 7th year, Colin got quiet in a new way. Not dramatic, clinical. He started critiquing small things, the hours I spent on job sites, the calls I took after dinner. "You care more about that company than this marriage," he said one night, and it landed exactly the way he wanted it to. Then came the phone. 7 years of never caring where it was, and suddenly it never left his hand. One morning I reached for it to check the weather and he grabbed it before I touched the screen. "Since when do you lock your phone?" His face went hard. "Can't I have privacy?" "I'm planning your birthday," he added, a beat too fast. "My birthday's in April." He smiled. "I like planning ahead." 6 months of planning eventually produced a $40 gift card to a hardware store. The lies had already started, I just hadn't learned to read them yet. Before I tell you what I found on our joint statement that October, let me ask you something. If your gut had been quietly screaming at you for months and you kept talking yourself out of it, tell me in the comments how long it took you to finally listen, because mine took embarrassingly long. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because you're going to want to see what was hiding in a hotel folio. I handle our finances because Colin hates paperwork, always has. Nothing unusual, most months. Then, that October, a pattern I couldn't unsee. A downtown hotel, 6 consecutive Saturdays. Restaurant charges for 2. A jewelry purchase that never showed up anywhere in our house. I carried the statement into the kitchen. "Colin, what's this hotel charge?" He barely glanced up. "Marcus has roommates now, needed somewhere quiet to work on a brief." "For 6 Saturdays?" He closed his laptop slowly. "Are you seriously auditing me now?" "I'm asking about our money." "No, Mara," he said, and his voice had a coldness I'd never heard from him before. "You're becoming paranoid. Maybe if you spent half the energy loving your husband that you spend balancing spreadsheets, we wouldn't be having this conversation." It landed like a slap. For days I genuinely wondered if I'd become the problem. That was Colin's real talent, making me the one who owed the apology. So I stopped confronting him and started watching instead. Every Saturday he left around noon. Every Sunday he came home late, showered before he said a word to me, then turned unusually affectionate, coffee in bed, breakfast, movie nights, like he was trying to paper over something. One evening he asked, too casually, "So when's your site trip to Ashland again?" "Why?" "Just wondering." "Next month." He nodded a beat too fast. I filed it. Thanksgiving finished the job my instincts had started. The whole family gathered at Diane and Grant's. Wesley helped carve, the kids ran the hallway, and Priya sat across from Colin laughing at everything he said, a laugh with a rehearsed edge to it I finally recognized. Every few minutes her phone buzzed, and every time, Colin glanced at her before looking away. During dessert she stood. "Work call," she said, and stepped outside. 2 minutes later Colin looked at his own phone. "Marcus is having a rough day," he announced. "I'll drive you," I offered. "No, too fast again." "Stay, have pie." Through the window I watched Priya standing by her car, not talking, texting. Colin looked at his phone and smiled the exact same smile. That smile rode home with me the whole drive. That night I called Teo, my business partner, the only person I trusted completely. I laid it out. 30 seconds of silence on his end. "You think it's Priya?" "I don't know what to think." "I do," he said. "Your gut's been screaming and you've been arguing with it. The first Saturday we staked out the hotel, nothing. The second, nothing. I nearly apologized to Teo for the wasted weekend. The third Saturday, at 12:40, a black Audi rolled into the garage. Teo set down his coffee. "That's her." My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. Colin climbed out of the passenger seat, not his own car, wearing the wool coat I bought him for our anniversary. Priya reached over and brushed something off his shoulder before laughing. Neither of them looked nervous. They looked practiced. Teo raised the camera. "I'm sorry, Mara." Click. They walked in together and didn't look back. 3 hours later they came out holding hands, and he kissed her against the driver's door, long, unhurried, the kind of kiss two people give each other when they've done it 100 times and stopped being careful about it. Teo kept shooting. Neither of us spoke. When they finally drove off, I stared at the empty space for almost a minute, and what I felt wasn't tears. It was something colder and steadier. "They've done this before," I said. Teo nodded. "A lot. We need more than pictures." "You thinking divorce?" "I'm thinking proof." That Tuesday, Colin left for what he called case prep with Marcus. I walked into the spare room and turned on the old desktop we hadn't used in years. Months earlier I'd noticed his old email account still auto-loading notifications on that machine. I'd ignored it out of respect. That night I stopped respecting anything. Within minutes I had everything, hundreds of messages, hotel confirmations, a full 7 months documented in his own words. He complained about me constantly, called me cold, called me married to my company. She complained about Wesley. Then it turned romantic. Then it turned into planning. One message, dated the second week of December, stopped my breathing entirely. Him, "Saturday can't come fast enough." Her, "Same room." Him, "Already booked." Her, "I think Wesley suspects." Him, "He's buried in the quarter close, completely clueless." Then, him, "What about Christmas dinner?" Her, "That's cruel." Him, "Quick and clean. Everyone's already together, rip it off once." One dinner, one announcement, 2 divorces done at the same table. Teo showed up 20 minutes later and neither of us said much while the printer ran hotel folios, messages, credit card statements, timelines, photographs. By midnight my kitchen table looked less like a home and more like an evidence locker. Then Teo went quiet over one spreadsheet. "Mara. Look who paid for almost every single one of these." I looked closer. Every hotel, every dinner, every piece of jewelry run through our joint card. I scrolled further, a boutique, 2 5-star dinners a month, a weekend suite package, nearly $10,000 over 7 months. Money I'd earned had financed my husband's affair, receipt by receipt. They weren't just cheating, Teo said quietly. They were stealing. That sentence rearranged something in me. I'd been bracing for heartbreak. From that second on, I was building a case. Within days, I became a version of myself Colin had never had to negotiate with, quiet, methodical, unhurried. I called my attorney first, and by the end of that meeting I understood exactly how to protect my company, my house, everything I'd built with my own hands before he ever showed up in that backyard. Every account got reorganized. Every document got reviewed. Colin, who hated paperwork, signed whatever I put in front of him without reading a word of it. "If you think it's better for taxes," he said, eyes on his phone, "I trust you." I almost laughed out loud at that one. 7 months of lying to my face, and he was still handing me his signature like a man who'd never once considered I might use it against him. Meanwhile Teo kept digging on Priya's end, and 3 nights later he walked in with another folder. "You need to see this." Expense reports from her firm, corporate card charges for personal shopping, 5-star dinners, part of her lease payment, all filed as client entertainment. She wasn't only stealing from Wesley. She was stealing from her employer, close to $18,000 of it. "So if this all comes out," I said. Teo nodded. "The affair won't even be her biggest problem." For the next 10 days, we built the file properly, photographs, messages, hotel folios, financial records, a full timeline of exactly how it started and how it escalated. 3 complete copies. 1 for Colin. 1 for Wesley. 1 for his parents. A 4th stayed locked with my attorney, and digital backups set on 2 separate encrypted drives, because if anyone tried to deny any of it later, the proof needed to survive the denial. Christmas Eve, Colin wrapped presents humming carols under his breath and kissed my forehead before bed. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." I said it back and meant absolutely nothing by it. He slept fine. I lay awake doing inventory on 7 months, the way you check a wound before you decide whether it needs stitches. We arrived at Diane and Grant's the next afternoon, and the whole scene played out exactly like every Christmas before it. Kids in the hallway, carols on low, Diane critiquing the ham, Grant on his second whiskey before the turkey even hit the table. Wesley looked exhausted from wrangling the kids all morning. Priya looked radiant, and Colin couldn't stop glancing her way, a habit he clearly thought was invisible. Dinner went the way it always did. Mara works too much, Diane said, not for the first time. I just smiled. My company's growing, Colin added quietly, and I understood exactly what he was doing, planting seeds, priming the room to believe I'd driven him away long before anyone opened an envelope. Priya nodded sympathetically. Work can swallow someone's whole identity. Wesley looked uncomfortable. I stayed quiet, because I already knew exactly how the scene ended. Dessert came, then coffee. Colin stood slowly, hand trembling as he reached into his jacket. I have something I need to say. The table went still. Diane smiled like she'd been waiting all year for this. Grant leaned forward. Priya lowered her eyes, rehearsing sadness she didn't feel. Colin walked around the table and set a red envelope in front of me. Merry Christmas. I opened it. Divorce papers, exactly as promised in his own handwriting 7 days earlier. I folded the page back along its crease. No tears, no shaking, nothing for him to work with. Diane actually laughed. Finally. Grant nodded. Probably for the best. Wesley looked between us, completely lost. What is happening right now? I don't think Mara and I are compatible anymore, Colin said. Under the table, out of everyone's sightline except mine, Priya reached over and touched his hand. I smiled. It wasn't in his script, and his face knew it. Without a word, I nodded toward the tree. You should open your gift first. His confidence flickered. My gift? The small blue box. The whole table went quiet with confusion. Now? Diane asked. Please, I said. He walked to the tree, came back, pulled the ribbon, lifted the lid. And everything changed at once. The first photograph sat right on top, Colin kissing Priya against her car door. Underneath it, another. And another. Below those, 3 labeled drives, messages, hotel records, financial statements. He stopped breathing somewhere around the 3rd photo. Priya's hands started shaking before anyone even asked her a question. Wesley leaned forward. What is that? I slid a second folder across the table. Open it. He did. Page 1, the 2 of them walking into the hotel. Page 2, them embracing in the lobby. Page 3, the kiss from the parking garage. His face went completely white. No. He kept turning pages, receipts, messages, dates, more photographs, each one another nail. Priya whispered his name and he looked at her like he'd never once actually seen her before. What have you done? I stood up slowly. For the last 7 months, my husband and your wife have been having an affair. Silence, the real kind, the kind with weight. Then Diane's wine glass slipped and shattered on the floor. Grant just stared at Colin, unable to land on a single word. Colin tried. Mara, please, I lifted another folder before he could finish. These are every message the 2 of you exchanged. Another. Every hotel folio. Another. Every dollar of my money you spent doing it. I turned to Priya. And every fraudulent expense report you filed with your company over the last year. She froze completely, mouth open, no words behind it. Teo had been right, that line frightened her more than the affair itself ever could. Wesley stood so fast his chair nearly went over, hands shaking hard enough that a photograph slid off the table and landed face up on the floor between them, his brother and his wife caught in the same frame, over and over. Colin looked at me with something close to panic. You went through my email. I met his eyes and didn't blink. You wanted everyone together for Christmas. I let that sit a second. So did I. Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet and steady, the way it does when it doesn't know or care what it's falling on. Inside, everything the Carters, the Ashfords, had spent 7 months protecting came apart in about 4 minutes flat, and none of it needed me to raise my voice even once. Here's what happened after, because life doesn't hand you a dramatic freeze-frame ending, it hands you a Tuesday. The divorce finalized 4 months later, clean, because Colin's attorney took one look at the evidence file and told him to settle before it went anywhere near a courtroom. He kept his car and his law degree. I kept my company, my house, and every account I built with my own 2 hands before he ever leaned against that fence at a barbecue. Wesley filed for divorce from Priya 2 weeks after Christmas. Her company opened its own internal investigation within the month, and I heard, secondhand, that it did not end well for her. I don't take pleasure in that, exactly. I take accuracy in it. Diane called me once, in February, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, trying to say she hadn't known. I let her finish. Then I told her, calmly, that I didn't need her to have known, I needed her, just once, not to have laughed. She didn't have an answer for that, and I didn't need one. Teo and I still run the firm together, and it's bigger now than it was that Christmas, 22 people on the crew, more work than we can schedule. I bought myself a smaller house this spring, one with a porch I designed exactly the way I wanted it, no compromises, no someday. Some mornings I still catch myself doing the math on those 7 months, the way you keep checking a bruise to see if it still hurts. It does, some days. Less than it used to. Here's what I actually learned, and it wasn't dramatic, it just took me longer than it should have. Trust isn't supposed to feel like evidence gathering. The day it does, you're not being paranoid, you're finally paying attention. And the people who need a whole family in the room to watch them confess usually aren't looking for forgiveness. They're looking for an audience. I decided that Christmas I'd rather be the one holding the folder than the one hoping nobody opens it. That's my story. If you've ever built a case in silence while everyone around you thought you were the one falling apart, tell me about it in the comments, because I read every single one. And if you believe the truth deserves better timing than the people hiding it ever expect, subscribe to Hidden Chapters. There's another quiet one finding her voice here next week, and she might just sound a little like you.